Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I am streaming this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, usually on Tuesday or Thursday nights, and it also gets uploaded as a YouTube video, as well as being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure, usually Thursday mornings. So, if you want to really support the podcast, please feel free to leave all of the social media doobly doos, like leaving a rating, like, follow, subscribe, review, and comment, depending on the platform that you're listening on. It does help a lot. So, today I am back yet again with some members from Team Blank. This time it's going to be Headless and Guardian, and today we're going to be talking about BT17 and our initial thoughts and impressions of it. But before we get into the meta portion of the podcast, because we always like to start with, the meta report, the question of the week is, what decks are you look forward to play the most in BT17? So this is kind of like a little bit of a primer before we get into the real meat and potatoes. So, just as an example, I'm probably looking forward to Ancient Garurumon the most. I'm an avid blue player. I like swinging a lot and burning the opponent's security. It does everything that Magnum like Mirage does, and I like Mirage a lot. So it's just a new Mirage. Not exactly, but similar enough. So, what about you guys? What are you looking forward to in BT17 the most?
All right, I guess I take this off. Okay, what I'm looking forward to is either the ancient decks and Gallantmon, actually. Because Gallantmon's getting new support in the form of Takato and Crimson Ace, virtually letting us Digivolve at the end of our turn through a warp without paying the cost, better than the BT12 Gallant or Takato, which forces us to pay the cost. So I can literally go into my 13 Gallantmon right there, swing, and basically take back memory almost immediately. And then as far as the ancients, what can you say? You already talked about Ancient Guru. Ancient Gray is going to be funny to play too.
Yeah, he just does the same thing, just hitting hard instead of hitting a lot.
Yeah.
What about you, Headless? What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to SOC. So I'm mainly a purple player, like even though purple's kind of been in shambles for a while. But so I like any deck that like plays purple but isn't colored purple. So us getting the new purple side of our deck that like, is there and exists and like just makes you like more of a menace, but like just getting to make use of collision I think is very cool. Like to be honest, collision's a very cool keyword that I think is more interesting than like raid.
I have to agree on that. Especially considering this collision actually is beneficial to the Alphamons and the actual, even though they hardly exist, the Doru players. It's
Well,
all very good for this upcoming set in that regard. And add on to the effect, the moment that you start to die, you can literally digivolve into your Death X version and activate Cool Boy immediately, gaining a memory and a free draw just from swinging.
Yeah, I mean,
I
uh,
don't think Cool Boy's all turns, but
Cool Boy's not all
yeah,
turns. It's only during your
No,
turn.
no.
yeah. So it has to happen on your turn, but you could have triggered Cool Boy a number of ways. But yeah, I get what you're saying. We'll get into it later. When we get back to that topic. But yeah, that's mainly what I'm interested in. There's a couple other guys that like I think look kind of fun, but like I don't have the highest hopes for, and we'll talk about it when we get there. But
Right. But we got a little bit more metadata to go over as EX6 continues to develop. So we had this came a little bit later in terms of when we actually got the data. The Geekery Store Regionals. So we have to remember store regionals are smaller events. These are probably like mid-size, like they're smaller than mid-size events because I would consider like the European events and the Australian events. Those usually get around 100 players. I would consider those the mid-size events. So this is like in between small and mid. So it was 55 players, 6 rounds of Swiss. We have the top 16 archetype breakdown, which really isn't anything we haven't seen before at this point. Like, most of the meta is pretty much solved, and it doesn't really look like anything's kind of changing that. So we have 6 Numemon, 3 Demon Lords, 1 Mirage, 1 Imperial, 1 Tyrant, 1 Magnamon X, 1 Shine Greymon, 1 Phoenixmon X, and 1 Yellow Vaccine armors. So most of these we already know and we've already seen. So I'm just going to skip right into the one that we really haven't seen a whole lot of, but we used to see a whole lot of it, and that's going to be the Shine deck. So Shine is making a comeback, question mark? No, not really.
I must say no.
Yeah, I think this player, just because it was a smaller event, that helped the player basically dodge anything that would keep the deck from being successful at larger events. I'm not saying that Shine isn't a good deck. It's still a very strong deck, but it just hasn't had results recently because of the dynamics on how the meta has changed. So, like, against Magnamon, this deck really isn't doing anything. Like, once they're in a Magnamon X, you just can't really do anything. And that's the part where it just kind of starts falling apart. So maybe it just saw less of those types of matchups, which helped prop the deck up because it is still a very strong deck. What this player ended up doing to make it successful is they actually splashed in a little bit of like Sylphie Velk stuff because you're already playing in red and white. I was going to say white, red and yellow. My brain was in Magic mode because I came from a Magic pre-release. Not recently, but over the past weekend. But yeah, so red, white. I did it again. Red, yellow. God dang it. Why do card games? Can't they all just keep things simple and just be the same?
No.
But I know.
They can't if they're Bandai. Bandai decided it was gonna do the same colors forever.
Yes, Bandai made my life easier. Incidentally, but yes. So it's playing on color. There we go. With what Shine was already doing. Sylphimon's a pretty decent DNA because it has partition. It's just good removal. And Velk just continues that trend, and then you just do your Shine Greymon stuff. The interesting thing to note is this player is actually heavier on Ruin mode than Burst mode, which is what leads me to believe this is more of a control build. So it's just like, yeah, I'm going to Valk Ace, and then I'm going to Ruin mode. And I don't care if I pass the memory, I basically make it so you just don't get to play for a turn, which is really obnoxious. And yeah, so it's just a Shine deck. I don't really know what else to say other than those inclusions. And the meta is basically stagnating at this point. All of the top decks are pretty much well known as far as what's actually able to do well, and it's mostly represented here. So yeah, nothing else to say. Good thing we're going to be leaving EX6 meta because I don't know how you guys feel about EX6, but I am bored to tears, and I do not like this format very much.
I'm sad Massimon didn't do as well as I was hoping.
Every time I played against Massimon, I feel bad for them because I just know how to stomp their deck, and it just makes me sad.
Everyone does at this point.
Yeah, it just makes, like you said, it just kind of makes you sad that, like, this was supposed to be really cool. The secret is one of the most expensive secrets that we currently have in the game, mostly because of waifu tax, not actually because of playability, because I honestly think the old one is still a little bit better.
Yeah, the current Massimons are only really playing it at 2 now because they're realizing, oh, this thing's actually rather bad.
Well, like, you don't care about the end of turn DNA, especially if you're trying to ace. So it's like, it functionally just doesn't matter anymore in terms of what the card is trying to do. And you're still playing Gato, so you still have end of turn DNA.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just is a card that's not really doing a lot. And that's where the majority of the meta is. It feels like what we've had and what we have is just what's even viable. And if you're not in that small little pocket of decks, it's just gonna be a real rough time. Like, decks can sneak a win here or there into top 16, as we've seen before. I think last time I looked at it, we had like 20 something decks actually able to make it into top 16, but in terms of what actually was topping, it was not repeated success of any of those one-off decks. And I'll eventually get to do a meta breakdown of EX6 once I get all of the data, but it seems like we're going to be in BT17 for quite a while. How long does BT17 actually last? I don't even remember. I think it's like 3 months.
Let me see. Let me see for EX7 and structure.
No, because it's the structure decks come up before EX7, and so
Yeah,
they
but the
changed
structure
the meta
decks,
ever so slightly.
I don't think the structure decks will have any impact. Let's just skip to EX7. When does EX7 come out? So we know how long we're in
EX7
BT17.
comes out next month.
Not EX7. That's
EX7. EX7 September. I'm counting this. This was already August. You know.
I mean,
So-
you're not entirely wrong. By the time viewers will be listening to this,
So
it
literally
will be
just
August.
next month, September.
Is it really that quick?
Yeah.
Because remember, they have us on the accelerated schedule right now.
Oh, gross. I mean, not to get
And
too
then
far
a
ahead
couple
of
months
ourselves.
later, we got 1819.
Yeah, 1819
In
happens
November.
in November, so they leave us a little bit of
So
time to
there's
like try and do stuff.
September, October, November. So we have about like 2.5 months of BT17 slash EX7, which, as we already know, EX7 really isn't going to be shaking up the meta at all. Like,
No, it's not. It's gonna have some funny stuff.
yeah, it's
It
going to
makes
have some
demons
fun, cute
better.
things.
It makes demons better. It makes mother control a thing, as well as black blocker like kind of becomes a bit more efficient.
Yeah.
But other than that, like not too much that it's doing. Sadly, none of it's like real decks in there like made big waves. Like as much as I'm very disappointed to say that, because there's a couple of strategies that I honestly really liked in EX7. But we're not talking about that this episode, so we'll move into 17. But before
Right.
we start talking about decks in 17, since this is the movie set, what was everybody's favorite movie?
My favorite movie? Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
your favorite
OG.
Digimon movie.
God, that's real difficult. I liked a lot of them. I have a soft spot for Runaway Trailmon. I kind of do.
Yeah, the Runaway Locomon one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Runaway Locomon.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So I just love the OG. Can't go wrong with it.
So you like 3 movies stapled together, is what I'm hearing? for Ian, at least?
No. I'm talking about the Omnimon one, man.
He's talking
Oh,
about
our
just
Wargame?
yeah. He's just talking
Just
about
our Wargame? Okay. Just our Wargame. Wargame is pretty good, right? It's so good that he decided to make the same movie again.
Hey, Summer Wars was slap. Like, Studio Chizo does some really good stuff when they make movies.
But it is just
Sometimes.
our Wargame again. But...
No, it 100% is. And it's the same exact, like, art style, too. Like, when they get into the digital world, red outlines on the characters. Like, yeah. It's the same.
It's 90s, man. They're not really creative back then.
No, Summer Wars was, like, 2000, like, in the 2010s.
I think our Wargame is
was
probably,
like a
to be
Wargame.
honest, the strongest. Like, it has the most stakes, it feels like, to it.
Oh,
than,
100%.
Like, most of the other ones. Like, I think the second Tamers one maybe has, like, a bit more stakes, and you have, like, interesting
Wait, on the one
ideas.
the Guardians?
The Golfmon one. Where they have, like, clone slash, like, you know...
Oh yeah, the one where Crimson
Digimon
Savior is
stuff?
basically stilled from.
I think that one's kind of fun, and I mainly like it because I think Golfmon's a very funny Digimon that, like, that's his, like, only appearance just about. Like, he gets no play otherwise. So, but I do think that, like, our Wargame is probably the best one.
In terms of, like, actual story content, yeah. Like, it's the complete package. I'm not saying the other Digimon movies aren't the complete package. It's just, in terms of, like, the overall strength of the story that's being told, it very clearly is the strongest. Which is unfortunate
I think the Frontiers movie is probably the weakest, though.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for Tamers, which is why I chose Runaway Locomon.
Yeah.
That and like a lot of what Tamers did kind of set up what Frontiers is, because you have the Locomons in Frontier as
Yeah, the
like a
Gumos,
major
yeah.
thing, and then the whole like, oh, human or Digimon too,
Yeah,
that
biomerge-esque
was
stuff.
set
Yeah.
up by Biomerge. But
I
Mm,
do I do kind of think it's a little sad that in this movie set we just completely ignored like what is, in my opinion, one of the slightly better movies, even if like it's really hard to watch now, like the CGI X Antibody movie. Honestly, I think it's a pretty cool one. Like for it being
X
one that
Evolution,
like doesn't
yeah,
have that doesn't have any human characters in it. I think is honestly a very cool movie. If you can find it and can stomach the like early like '90s CGI, like go for it. It's a fun ride.
I think
it
you could find
honestly
it
would
free
have
on
been nice
YouTube.
to see
Mhm.
to honestly have Alphamon's movie in the set, but
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they, I guess, just couldn't figure out how to work it in. Like, I feel like there's certain characters that like maybe didn't need to make it in, but well, we're gonna go over it right now.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
this set is definitely a movie-based set. In case anyone is, looking at spoilers and are wondering, like, oh, what is the set doing? The main theme is movies. The sub theme is obviously finishing the unfinished Seekers, which Seekers, even after this, is still technically unfinished, which is sad. But it is what it is. I think they kind of knew that they messed up Seekers, and they're trying to make Liberators not that same mess up.
Yeah, but Liberators on its own is already kind of. I don't
Oh, it's already
actually have
leaps
a
and
good word.
bounds better than anything Seekers was.
I
Like
think it's
leaps and
me
bounds.
having visuals. I think just improves everything so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's really sad because Seekers was supposed to be like cross media, this and that. Like, they had live action actors, they had like the CGI like little trailers and stuff like that, and
The
then it
Vitality
just
Bracelet tie-ins,
yeah,
the
exactly.
card
Like,
tie-ins.
and then it seems like they kind of all fell apart, mainly because like
It
the
was just
books were
badly planned.
AI written and like the translations were really wonky, and so like as an EN person, like it was just really hard. I don't know, and I wonder like how well Seekers is like thought of by like Japanese fans. Like that's something I would love to find out. If anybody knows, please let us know.
Yeah, I mean, at least like maybe eventually they could finish Seeker's story, because there's literally like, oh, we're gonna introduce the big boss, and then kind of just leave you hanging from there, and like leave a lot of questions and characters unfinished.
Hmm.
Um, but outside of that, this is the end of Seekers in quotation marks, in terms of we finally get the last bit of story that was actually written, on top of the movies. And the new cards that Seekers got for it's Pulsemon and SOC that's being supported by the set. They're actually pretty decent. Like Pulsemon, take it or leave it, he's probably the worst of the Seeker stuff, unfortunately. But both of the SOC stuff is like actually kind of fire.
Yeah, yeah.
And then literally outside of the Seekers, it's all movies, all movies. So everything is a movie reference. Not all the movies are represented, but a good portion are. Um, I should
Yeah,
have had a
their
list of like what
representation
movies
is
actually
a
were
little
represented.
varying. So they have the first movie, which is like I forget what its title is at this moment, but
Yeah,
the first
that's
movie is the one with
Greymon versus Parrotmon.
Greymon versus
Yeah,
Parrotmon.
it was
Like
just Digimon, the movie. That's all it really was. It didn't have a title to it.
I'm pretty sure it has a proper subtitle, but that's the one with like baby Kari and Kai, and they raise a Koromon into a Greymon, and so it's referenced in the Secret Rare Greymon, who like his name gets treated as Koromon because Kai just calls him Koromon because that's the first name he gets for his
Yeah.
friend. Sadly, Parrotmon doesn't make it into the set.
No,
Like, so it's
Parrotmon's in the
really
set.
is he in?
He
Yeah,
is.
Parrotmon is in the set. It's not nearly as good. It has a security effect, and then it just
Oh, there he is. Okay.
yeah, on play and just when Digivolve suspend, and then just
Oh,
your
okay, okay.
classic green inheritable.
Yeah.
When something's deleted by battle, you get to unsuspend this Digimon.
So that movie doesn't really get a deck. It gets three cards. It gets a Parrotmon. It gets a Tamer, being the white Tai and Kari, and it gets the white Secret Rare Greymon. So
Yes.
no deck for them.
Then we got our war games,
Right, which
obviously,
gets
Okay,
and
so it's
more
literally just called Digimon Adventure.
yeah, Digimon
Okay.
Adventure.
Then
Yeah,
it's War
and then
Games, and then Hurricane Touchdown, Transcendent Evolution.
yeah.
Yep. So
So
those each, I mean, Terriermon in Hurricane is a line and a tamer, so it's not really a full deck either. And as far as like actual bunny support, it's not the greatest bunny support. So if you're already invested in like a Terriermon deck, it's not super great. But the Alliance half gets like actually the biggest buff because you get one of the best level fives next to the level 5 that we just got from EX6, which is the Intilamon. So, like, if anyone's wondering what the optimal level 5 is, it's EX6 Intilamon, BT17 Intilamon, because they're doing very similar things. They both have Alliance and they both play Digimon for free when you Digivolve up into it. So, that's the key takeaway on why those cards are, like, really good for the deck.
So did we answer Shooting Slayer's question about Seekers?
No.
He's asking what happened to Seekers.
It finished, and it finished in an unfinished state. So that's basically what happened. So we kind of answered it. We don't know if it's actually going to get any kind of continuation or whatever, but I think like this is Bandai being incompetent, and by Bandai being incompetent, it's just Bandai not knowing how to, sell the products that they make. So they just didn't bother to finish. It feels like they just didn't bother to finish Seekers because everything was falling apart at the seams. So they're just like, why would we bother, investing any more money into this when we could just cut our losses? That's what it seems like. And that's a very Bandai thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, I guess we could just talk like going down movie line. So like, our war game gets the
two
Omnimon
decks.
stuff.
Yeah. Omnimon Ace is its own deck. It is made up of two rookies, a tamer, a Ace Digimon, and two Megas. They just decided you don't get champions or ultimate level Digimon.
No, and you get a move like all of the options in the set except for the Pulsemon option are all movie references, like directly movie references, and they're gonna like have some special treatment to them. And they're all really good cards for the most part. At least the 2-cost ones. The 3-cost ones are kind of mid or mediocre at best. But yeah, this deck is basically just trying to do that whole like crisscross DNA thing again that we've seen multiple times, and that's never been good ever. And this is just their latest attempt on trying to basically skip stages to do it now. Which, I mean, I guess. Unfortunately, Omnimon doesn't have any protection, so he just kind of can get outed and then just dies.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
where
he's
I
at least
was.
pretty decent into the meta though. So he answers Numemon pretty well because you can just be like, oh, I roll all your fives to back to the bottom of the deck, and then I kill something, or I roll all your threes or fours. So like the
Yeah.
fact that he does his, oh, I'm gonna kill a bunch of Diaboromons, like, is pretty good.
Yeah, and he has the counter DNA, so like you only realistically need to get one mega out, which isn't hard considering we have new ways to warp up into the Metal Garurumon and War Greymon. And then from what I remember looking at Japanese decks, they use a little bit of the Alter S Alter B stuff, just because that again is interacting literally with both lines by name. And on top of that, you also are going to be using the secret rares because, they also are easy warp points. So as long as the opponent just has a mega, you have very easy ways to be able to get up into your mega, and then you just sit on that, and Omnimon Ace is just waiting to come out.
Yeah, that's where I was playing around with the black engine of jumping back and forth and then using the Altarius and Sagittarius for trying
I
to
liked
protect that.
my build. My build uses blue pieces. So
Yeah,
one of
you
the
were
issues,
more on the freaking blue flare, which is a
you don't have to
smarter
give away my
idea.
technology, okay? I pioneered that technology, and I didn't need them to know it just yet. But yes, so I'm using Blue Flare to get there. So Blue Flare, the gimmick there is that you are a blue level 5 Digimon, so that your guys can just Evo for 3, and they have both on plan when Digivolvings. So you can put metal Garurumons on top of metal Greymons, and the new Greymons just need a Greymon in name to go on top of, so they can ignore color. So it just gives you access to all of your megas, being able to like go down for 3 as opposed to what the deck normally wants you to do, which is hard slam it for like what is it? 11 minus 3, that would be 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want you to hard slam it for 8 and then hopefully get rebates by the tamers. But like this way, like you just have easier ways to do it. The blue flare pieces like give you aggressive rush bodies so that you can close up the game here or there, as well as like stun stuff, which like stunning is slightly counterintuitive to right getting your blast ace off, but
Hmm.
you don't really care if it buys you the turns to like set up and then just you do like normal aggression, like because sometimes the deck's big problem, like same as like Ragna, is you just don't find the other guy like when you'd like to. So like getting more time to do that, I think is fine.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty interesting because the deck technically isn't a full deck, it is a package. It can work off of a lot, and I think that's like the fun is figuring out where and how to best use these cards. And those are coming from the movie Our War Game. Like I kind of already mentioned before, Hurricane Touchdown. We're really not getting a whole lot of support from this one. It's just the Terriermon and the Willis, which is mediocre support for Rapid that we already are playing with. So nothing's really going to be super impactful there because Willis's stuff stops at level 5 with the Cherubi. Or not Cherubi, Intila. Because you get literally a new Terrier, you get a Gargo, Intila, and Willis, and that's it. He doesn't have any other cards to his name. Which is sad, but that's the... They only had so much space to shove so many different movies in.
Yeah, they probably could have spaced it out, honestly.
Yeah. And then we have Revenge of Diaboromon. So obviously that's supported with a new Diaboromon line, and by new Diaboromon line, we don't actually mean a full evolution line. That's going to be a reoccurring theme because this Diaboromon just gets Caramon, Inframon, and a new Diaboromon and the Clock of the End option card.
It's because those guys are references to Wargame, and in Wargame we never see
Yeah, we never see the level
Crystal.
4.
Yeah, we never see Crystal. He warps from Kara to Infra, and then the only reference he's getting is he's getting Armageddon from that movie, and then it goes into giving Imperial Dramon just Paladin mode and an option card.
Yes.
Which those are just so good.
There's also the dual tamer. I forget that exists too.
Yes.
So
Oh, so yeah, for Omnimon you get a dual
or do you
tamer,
have a better one?
and then for Imperial in Revenge of Diaboromon you get Davis and Ken, which it's a not bad tamer. It's just we already have a better tamer, so there's no real reason to run this card. You could try to splash it in just because it's not awful. It's just
it's honestly a pretty cool card, but the problem is that the deck just doesn't have that many ways to play them for free. So it costing 5 like hurts when all it's doing is giving you partition, but for battle.
yeah, and it's also just a memory setter, which you already have a Davis, which is a searcher that costs less, that is still searchable.
So like maybe it has room in the deck if the deck ever like gets a way to play Kenza Davises for like free.
Yeah. And in terms of like the Diaboromon stuff, not to like kind of bounce back and forth a whole lot, Clock of the End is a gimmick, it's bad. Armageddon is okay at best. The old one is still just better because he just floodgates the opponent's level 7s from using their When Digivolving effect, which there's a lot of good level 7s with good When Digivolving effects. And you're mostly just going to be looking at Caramon and Inframon in terms of support. Arguably, the Inframon is like the best card out of this for Diaboromon because it has that same inheritable that we got with EX6, which the D-Digivolve matters quite a lot. And then when you Digivolve up into him, you still get a D-Digivolve and then floodgate the opponent from attacking with small bodies. So it's a really big boost to Diaboromon, even though Diaboromon's already just barely competitive as is. And then, yeah, the Caramon, same inheritables, just play out a token, and then it just warps. Cool. So not really anything exciting there. But yeah, Imperial, the biggest boost to him obviously is going to be the Ace, the level 7 Ace and the option card. Their option card is like actually insane. So it's a reduced cost to Digivolve, which is already very good because sometimes you just need to try to be more memory efficient, which this card's helping you do. It's not exactly to like the levels of hidden potential, but it's basically win rate 60% for Imperial specifically. And
Yeah.
then the delay effect is basically protection, where if they're trying to delete your Digimon, instead of partition, you just be like, JK, I'm gonna Evo instead. And that can like make or break a lot of things depending
Yeah.
on which Imperial you're going into, because it doesn't specifically say Paladin mode. It's just any Imperial. So you could use this on the level 5 to go into a level 6. You could go from a level 6 to another level 6 if you're Dragon mode into a Fighter mode, or you could go from any of the level 6s into the level 7, which the level 7, I believe, was supposed to be the counter to Apocalypse, because Bandai loves to solution sell. This card just unfortunately came too late, because it's one of the best ways to interact with the trash in the entire game. Because what does it do? By trashing all Digivolution cards from your opponent's Digimon, which in Apocalypse instance is everything, then return all cards from your opponent's trash to the bottom of their deck, which just shuts down a lot of trash-based
It
strategies.
shuts down Nume. It shuts down.
I mean, it doesn't
Freaking
really hardcore shut down Nume. I mean, the Wind Digivolving part to just get rid of everything and
Yeah.
then put it all into the bottom, that is really brutal. But outside of literally replaying your Nume X's, you're not really interacting with your trash that much.
It set you up so that like in the Apocalypse matchup you could be like, oh, I'm not gonna spin your deck back. I'll just spin my own deck back so that I don't deck out and lose.
Right. Like, it definitely is a card that felt like it was supposed to counter Apocalypse, but it also just incidentally counters any trash-based strategy, which, again, there's a good number of them.
Yeah.
And with the upcoming Gallantmon support, which heavy supports trash-based strategy, this does hurt it quite a bit.
Well, there's also the fact that because this card is another 3-color card, it could be slotted in to actually a lot. It is mostly blue and green because that's what it's evoing off of. But the fact that you could still be like, haha, here's Heaven's Judgment for minus 24 alone without any help from any other card is still pretty funny. The fact that it's a level 7 ace means that it can go into Magnamon decks because they're blue. So you could just Evo in case, they're trying to out the Magnamon. Well, can they out the Imperial? So it's just a very flexible card that can be slotted into a lot. Like, I've seen this card be played in a lot of different blue and green decks.
Yeah.
Because it's not exactly specifically stating anything that outside of the alternative Digivolution cost that needs free or Imperial. So that is Revenge of Diaboromon. Battle of Adventures. That's the island one, right? That's with Golfmon. Yeah,
Yes, that's the Golfmon movie.
Yeah, Golfmon and Ciceramon. So I remember that movie. Yeah, though they do get cards. Golfmon is more Dark Masters support, which he's not going to see any play at all because Dark Masters as a concept is basically dead, and instead the cards are literally being used for better things because Golfmon, lore-wise, is supposed to be like Baby Apocalypse. Then you get the Mephisto that goes with it. Not really going to talk much about that card because it just doesn't matter. And then outside of that, you get the Cicermon stuff, which is more ocean friends. Like, is that what Ice Barrier named his deck? Which is basically just Zhangpen. Let me just put Digimon in, take them out.
I would just call it aquatic, honestly.
I called it aquatic. He calls it ocean friends. It's the same difference. But yeah, so she's just more specifically interacting with Labramon and Cicermon, which aren't aquatics. So it really is slightly awkward for the deck playing more cards that don't interact with the deck, but still have the
Yeah.
same functional mechanic. You're mostly, if you were to play this card in that deck, you're mostly just looking at the secondary ability, where when a card is spit out from your tamer, you could suspend the tamer to give that Digimon Rush, which is really good. So it just helps the deck be able to aggress. But the Labramon and Caesarmon aren't bad. You could at least consider playing Labramon because no, it requires Caesarmon more specifically, or a blue level 3. So it's just an on play, like, let me just tuck something underneath it, which is a blue level 3 or a Caesarmon, and then you just get a draw card, which is more cycling. The deck really doesn't need it, which is why, like, it's kind of in an awkward spot. And then Caesarmon basically just gives a Digimon jamming, and that's really it. He does some other kind of slightly interesting things, because he has an on-play and win Digivolve to, again, just fill up the inheritables, but I don't think they're really going to see that much play.
Yeah.
So that's that movie. Is there another Tamers movie?
The next Tamer movie is the Runaway Locomon movie.
Oh, yeah. So, Runaway Locomon. We actually do get a bunch of cards from this. This is the Hippogriffmon and Dracmon.
No, you're looking at the
Frontiers.
That's
Oh,
yeah. So for that
Oh,
one,
yeah,
it's
Runaway Locomon. That's where
Locomon, and then
that's where
Grand
the
Locomon.
Renmon stuff comes in.
Yeah, and then because Rika has like a big part in that movie, so she gets to be in the set, and Takado's in the set because he did everything in the Golfmon movie. Nobody else really did anything in that movie.
You're not wrong. And it's cool that Gallantmon gets more support and Renamon because they're both like huge fan favorites of Digimon players. With Gallantmon, we obviously get a new tamer, a new Takado. He's okay. He's basically doing what Henry is doing from the advanced deck. So we just get a Takado version of it, and I think Rika's doing that same exact thing.
Hold on.
No, she's a standard biomerge.
Oh,
So
she's the old biomerge.
Mhm.
She's not the
standard
new
biomerge.
good biomerge.
She is not free end of
Yeah.
turn biomerge.
That's unfortunate. And from what I know, the Sakuyamon cards are still interacting with plugins.
Plug-in type stuff, yeah.
So you get more plugin support, which is already pretty janky because there's just better options to play than plugins. And the fact that the deck is forced to play the plugins in order to make it functional is just not that great of a strategy, unfortunately.
They did change it a little bit where it doesn't like specify them in name, it just cares about options that are the 2 or more, which is how like Viximon was doing it, to like not specifically just call out the plugins, but yeah. You don't start like actually mentioning plugin by name until like the 5s and maybe the 6. Yeah, the 6 and the 5 mention it by name, but everybody else just cares about 2 or more costed options.
Right, so at least there's some like okay generic support there. So if you wanted to, you could consider using them in 4 Great Dragons. There's something there.
Right. As well as just by playing your like physical training, you get an extra little bonus, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, but from what we could tell, it doesn't seem like either Gallantmon, even with his ace, is still not good enough. And obviously, Sakuyamon barely made any waves in Japan, and I do not see her making any waves in English, especially for where the meta is coming from and what is actually allowed to be played because of the current environment that we find ourselves in. And both of these decks, unfortunately, aren't fitting into the niche that is a playable deck.
They also are missing out on a piece that Japan had that we're not going to have for a while. So they both are missing Ace Digimon that they were supposed to get from the Elm set.
Yeah, I mean, we at least get Crimson Ace, which is a generic red ace, which isn't bad. Like, other decks are probably going to be using the ace in the meantime, but Gallantmon definitely needed the Megidramon ace, and Sakuyamon needed Maid Mode ace, for sure.
Yup.
It's sad that they decided to cut them from the set just to sell them as promos. Because they're obviously made with this in mind. Like, very obviously.
And We also from this movie is the villain of the movie, Parasitemon, who had a terrible card in the original EX2, like a terrible, awful card. He's still a very funny Digimon, being a 9 cost, 4K, level 6 Digimon.
Which you'd think is terrible stats. And
Right,
you're
but he is
right.
pretty funny.
But he does have some saving graces to him. He has Alliance natively, so if you have another big Digimon, he could just Alliance and take all the stats. Then he has an ability that triggers from his hand. It's a little on the pricey side, but especially compared to Ragnarlordmon. But it's still good because you just get to throw him to the bottom to at least get his inheritable effects, which are pretty good, which is plus 3,000 DP. And when your Digimon dies, it plays out the Parasitemon.
Yeah, which is pretty cool to like float sixes. Like I put together a DNA list that was using him. It also had some of the Imperial pieces to a degree, but it was mainly using Hexa. Not sorry, not Hexa. Examon. That's the guy.
Oh,
And so
yeah,
like
yeah.
had a like level 6 that you could play out. Like if anything happened, like which leads to some pretty fun stuff. And like I was saying, Paladin mode just is always live. Like there was some cool stuff going on with it. Like I do think that it's definitely a very janky piece, but that's kind of the things that I'm liking. There's like a couple like very clear meta contenders in this set, but otherwise like it's mostly like janky for fun pieces from the
Yep,
movies.
yep, yep.
Well, actually, my use for Parasitemon, which is a little bit more personal, is Leomon, because
Hmm.
he's a card that can put himself into a source, so that way Fortitude brings out two
Live.
sixes.
Yeah.
So that's pretty funny, and the fact that I could do it from my hand and pay something is nice. He has Alliance, which could help push damage, so it's just like, oh yeah, I could like swing Alliance with my like 12 or 13k body.
I'm
So
sorry to
it's
say that it doesn't actually work though.
why?
So his is a when you would be deleted um by an effect. So he would have to play himself out first before you ever hit the trash. So if your guy didn't have anything under him, he's not coming back.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't happen at the same time, sadly.
So I mean, he still is good because he's a way to constantly refill your inheritable.
Hmm.
Because even at worst, like the end of attack ability that he has just throws himself in. So like if I just
Yeah.
have a uh, heavy Leomon sitting there, I could raise out a second stack and then just swing with Parasitemon and throw him back underneath the heavy
Hmm.
Leo. So
Yeah.
it's a one of it's a niche card
Hmm.
that has some cute applications. Not anything
Yeah.
crazy.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
then Trailmon up to Grand Locomon, like it's 3 cards. It really isn't much of anything. Like there's a slight bit more Trailmon stuff because it's a character in Frontiers. So like in 18, you get another Trailmon, but like they're like awkward machine pieces, and in theory they kind of support Parasitemon as well, like because of movie references. But like otherwise they're a wonky machine pieces. Like sadly, it means that you can't be playing them in Machine Dramon right now because Machine Dramon's back on the old EX1 Machine Dramon, so like that's only cyborgs it cares to absorb, so it can't absorb any of these machines, even though they do have a pretty sweet inheritable, giving you on your turn for machine type Digimon collision. So would have been cool if you could do it, but like the deck's not really there for Machine Dramon right now
Yeah,
to want to play
and
them.
not to sidestep, but while you're on the topic of Machine Dramon, we do get a new Chaos Dramon in the set. This is from Seekers because Chaos Dramon was the main target for the Sons of Chaos. And he makes an appearance in the set, and he's not great Machine Dramon support because he's Digicross, which is, like, not great. He
Yeah.
digivolves on top of SOC traded cards, so already not good for Machine Dramon because you want to digivolve on top of a Machine Dramon to build your stack. He's not gaining any abilities from the Machine Dramon, so like it's more of an SOC card than Machine Dramon, which is unfortunate, and it's not even a good SOC card because we have better stuff. But just wanted to highlight there is a Chaosdramon in the set. It's a good limited card. I'll say that for anyone who's interested in pre-release. I think like it's good in limited, but that's about it.
Yeah, that is not a good card. It makes
Uh,
it funny, but it's not good.
yeah. Then we get to the next
Island of
movie.
Lost Digimon is what it's called in America, but it's called something different in JP,
Yes.
the Frontiers movie.
Digimon Revival. That's what it's That's what it's translated to. But yeah, Island of Lost Digimon. This is where the Ornismon, Golfmon, Hippogriffmon, and Dracmon.
No, not Goldmon, but yeah, Hippogriff, Iraq, and then B2 Ornismon. So like, oh no, it's Ornismon, and then what the heck is the other guy's name? His name is
Murmacuse. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. And that guy, those guys have gotten cards before, and they were really bad. And these are
It's
about the
still
same,
really bad.
I mean,
unfortunately.
it's so the funny thing is, you're not wrong. Like they are just not good cards. It's just scaled to how bad they were back then for where the game was back then to how bad they are now for where the game is now. Like honestly, I think like if they released these cards like 2 years ago, these cards would be so good.
Yeah, no doubt.
But unfortunately, that's not the reality we live in. We're getting them now, and they're not gonna do anything.
They're absolute hot garbage.
Because, like, the idea is Murmacusmon, you get into Murmacusmon, and then Murmacusmon plays Ornismon, and then Ornismon is, like, your big control punchy card. So, like, that's what it's trying to do. It's just not great at it. It's cute. And then, because we're in Frontiers, we also get more hybrid support, which is what everyone loves. Everyone loves hybrids, right? Right?
It was your guys' deck, so I'll let you guys talk about them.
Yeah, so blue hybrids is going to be obviously the big meta deck. It's leaning into blue yellow, but a lot of the cards basically say, like, yeah, we're actually digivolving off of blue tamers, so we're still blue hybrids at this point, even though they are two colors for blue and yellow. You do get some interaction with having other colored tamers, because that's what they're trying to lean towards when we eventually get more hybrid support in BT18. But the big card is the Ancient Garurumon, because we have multiple ways we could warp off of him with the old promo Lobomon and the new Lobomon, on top of Ancient Garurumon having a Digicross, but you're not really going to be Digicrossing. It's just the fact that when you get up into Ancient Garurumon, he's just going to be bouncing an opponent's security back into their hand. Shocker, right? That was good in Mirage. It's good here too. He has unblockable because of the BT7 Koji, which, shocker, it's good in Mirage, so it's good here. And then when he dies, he gets to replay a Tamer and a hybrid traded Digimon, which is way better than the old Ancient that just plays a Tamer. Or, not Tamer, a level 4. So, like, it's just a strict upgrade on top of the fact that, can this card multi-attack? Yes, when a card is added into the hand. No, that's how it's bouncing.
That's how it's spinning a security card. I think it's the 5, right?
I think the 5 inheritable is.
No, the 5 is just a bouncing
No.
4. Okay.
Yeah, it might not be multi-attacking.
It's not a
but
multi-attacker.
yeah, but it's still just. Oh, it's because it's bouncing the security, so that's where the damage is coming
Extra
from.
check is coming from, yeah.
Yeah. Which, if they can't get rid of this, you have plenty of ways to bounce cards back to the opponent's hand to re-trigger the ability again.
Yeah,
so
every one of your turns.
So it's just a very threatening and menacing card that the opponent doesn't really have a whole lot of ability to deal with.
Yeah, since it floats back into like 2 pieces that like on your turn are equate to like 2 attacks effectively.
Yeah, because that's what was making Emperor Greymon from BT12 so good, is the fact that he's replaying the Tamer, so that way you just basically go all the way back up into a new Emperor. And this is basically doing the same thing, but better. So, that's blue.
And then red is basically now just Ancient Greymon beat. It's not as good as the blue, as we've been talking about, but it now has more opportunity to digivolve for cheaper into Ancient Greymons. So, say you start off on your regular Flamemon, you could basically digivolve into the Promo Goonie, and then digivolve into a Burning, then into the new Aguni. Now, the new Aguni is where everything lines up on everything. Because the new Aguni lets you digivolve into Ancient Greymon for a cost of 3. Using the inheritable from said promo will make this a cost of 1, allowing you to swing for big damage with Ancient Greymon into opponent's security. And if you add on to the effect that if you did this entire hypothetical with the Takuya, you could tack on Aldermon for no security activations. But again, it's red. All it's really meant to do is big damage. Compared to blue, it's a little bit more lackluster. So this is more of a funnier deck than competitive.
Yeah, we do get a new Koji and a new Takuya. The Kojis are trying to play catch up. So the Koji is taking the design philosophy from BT12 Takuya. So this is a memory setter, and it also just has a good inheritable ability that triggers when an effect adds a card to your hand, which there's a lot of. This time it's gaining jamming, so your attacks are going to be safe. Last time it was unblockable. And Takuya is a new Takuya. So it's a new style of tamer, I guess, for hybrids. So it's just Takuya is always just leading the charge in terms of like hybrid design. So this one will passively gain you a memory at the start of your turn, which none of the other Takuyas have done so far. And then this one is giving piercing if on top of the plus 2000 and it being obviously more than 10,000 DP, which is not hard for red hybrids at all. So that means the next Koji is going to follow more of BT17 Takuya's design. And then we get a
Whatever
option
that
card.
is.
Yeah, and then we get a new option card, the Ancient Protectors, which is a really good option card for
This
these
is
decks.
one of the best option cards in this set. Okay,
Yeah.
so whether it's for a tamer or more likely for the ancients, this card is going to make it to where you're basically playing it for a lot cheaper. So for basically 2 memory, you can play out your memory set or Koji like that for just 2 memory, virtually choking your opponent, or you can play the new Ancient Garurumon. Ancient Garurumon would instantly reduce its cost by 4 because of the option, and then it would activate its Digicross, which would let you tuck in the Lobomon and the Kendo, reducing it by an additional 6. This virtually makes your Ancients cost, what, 2 to 4?
They cost
Yeah.
4
Yeah,
in
it'll
total.
it'll
Yeah,
Because
cost
you had to
cost
more.
play the
4
option.
memory.
Because you had to play the option.
Yeah.
And this virtually activates its effects again, allowing you to do whatever it is you need to do.
Yeah,
And
it
now
does a
you
lot
have
of
a body
things.
to sit there in case they want to swing, and you can just go, okay, I'm going to go Imperial Ace. Have fun, mate.
Yeah, it's just a really good combination of cards, and Red Hybrids is also going to help with Ancient be able to flesh out whatever tech that he's doing, just because Red Hybrids has a actually pretty good card pool. So there's a lot of good stuff in the new hybrid style of play. On top of the fact that we already know in BT18, which is going to be our special booster 2.0, we're going to be getting even more hybrid support. So I would, if you're actually thinking about being more meta competitive, hybrids is definitely looking the way to go in this set.
Yes, but warning to anybody that buys into this on the upcoming 2.0, there is going to be 24 secret rares in that large set. Be careful because the boxes may not be
There's
worth it.
there's not going to be 24.
No? I thought there was.
No. I
It's
could look up
split,
how much.
so
I was just adding
Yeah,
two
it's
boxes
split.
together.
No, it's not both boxes together
But
because we're getting some
you
of
get you
BT19.
fully get one set, and then the other one gets split in half, and then we get the other half of it
Oh.
later with another set. Is how
Yeah.
they've announced it, but
Kind of hard to run for the city, not
I
fair.
mean,
But ultimately, it's for this upcoming thing. It's better to buy singles in that upcoming set. This way, you don't have to fight through just to pray to hope to get something you need from 19 and 18. That's my
the
word of
the pull
warning.
rates are definitely going to be very interesting to see what actually happens. I'm trying to see really quickly because I know it's all of in 2.0. It's all of 18 and half of 19. Um, so
I
we
didn't
know
know it
that.
happened 19. That's the one thing I did not know.
Yeah, we just don't know what half from 19 because Japan is currently spoiling 19 on their end.
Yeah.
That's official sleeves. Uh, that's adventure box. I can't find on GTS where 2.0 is.
It's probably something for later, Zan.
Yeah, but then unfortunately we don't get anything from X Evolution as we already said. Um,
Sad. No alpha.
Yeah, then it goes into the digital world in imminent danger, ultimate power, activate burst mode, which is the Savers movie, or yes, Savers movie, or Data Squad, whatever name you prefer. And this basically just gives us what? The Argamon stuff, and it gives us the Shine stuff. So, Shine is kind of trying to be like old BT2 Shine, where it cares more about suspending yellow tamers down, doesn't care what the tamer is, just as long as you could suspend a tamer down, and it's trying to be like this really weird control deck. It's not really trying to control, but it's like actually trying to incentivize your Digimon attacking, which is the complete opposite of how current Shine is. So the only like usable card for new Shine is obviously the burst mode, because that's the level 7 ace. Then really just the other Marcus, just because it's a new Marcus. So you do get an option, but the option's pretty bad because it just lets you play a Marcus out, which the deck has 1.5 million ways to play Marcus out. That's already better. And the delay effect really isn't doing anything that great. It's just when a Marcus basically is deleted, you get a Digivolve, which whoop-de-doo, you could already kind of do that. So it's not really having much impact. But the new Marcus is pretty decent because he, on play, makes himself into a blocker. So it's an instant blocker, which is nice. So that way you're not forced to run the BT13 Shine just to have some form of defense. And then it also has a nice alterns ability where when it becomes suspended, which it can do himself because he's going to be blocking, one of your Digimon gets plus 3,000 DP, and if you have an Agumon or Greymon, you get a gain of memory. So it's trying to anti-tempo at the same time.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting, honestly.
Yeah, with the new cards, it just wants to like suspend the Marcus, like suspend this Marcus specifically, so that way you're always going to get the memory. But like if you're still going to be suspending a Marcus, the BT5 Marcus, or not BT5, BT 13 Marcus is still just the better one to suspend because it minuses 3k, which is just better control. And you're still gaining the memory, so it's not like it matters there. This is just another tool to the toolbox, that's all. And then I don't know enough about the Argamon stuff. Do you know a whole lot about it, Headless?
Yeah, I was actually looking to kind of put it together as a jank list. So its big issue though is that you really like live or die by your tamer. You need that rhythm. And then the fact that right now the card game has the other Argamon level 5 limited to 1 makes your life a lot harder. But to be honest, it's kind of a funny deck. Like, it has the old Argamon text of your opponent's tamers can't unsuspend. So you kind of like have incidental like tamer hate, but your level
Okay.
5, your new one, um, they float into like the new big Argamon, which is pretty cool. And the new big Argamon can like stack Argamon level 5s under itself. So if you put all of its new level 5s under it, each one of them gives you a generic inheritable that you could like play in any deck. That you can suspend a rhythm tamer to unsuspend this Digimon. So you can just get like 5 checks in a turn
Disgusting.
if you actually get all 4 of those things, like all 8 cards right lined up. So like it's kind of a Merry Christmas land to even get it going, but it does seem kind of funny.
Yeah, I think that's all that's coming from that movie. I'm not really seeing any other support.
Yeah, it's just the rhythm tamer, which she cares about being suspended like all of the yellow like Marcus related tamers, and she draws you cards. So like she's supposed to like help facilitate like the deck being consistent to get there, but like you still have to see her and you still have to be able to play her.
Yeah, and then as far as the next movie, we kind of skipped Try because Try had like a whole set or like a good portion of stuff dedicated to it. And instead, we go all the way up to Last Kizuna, which is just more Eosmon stuff. So we get a new Morphmon, new level 4 Eos, new level 5, and new big Eos on top of a new Moena. So they're all
Yeah.
pretty good for the Eosmon deck. Unfortunately, Eosmon still isn't good. It's also trying to like do the whole like Argamon tamer hate thing, like shut tamers off, turn their abilities off, force the opponent to try to play them, so you could take advantage of that. But it's still struggling, and the promo that we already have of Morphemon does help. It's just not enough.
Yeah, and that movie looks really weird in the set because they ignored the protagonist, and that's mainly because they got cards in Elm, and the Elm set was designed with the set in mind. So
Right, because we get the Bond of Friendship and Bond of Courage aces as well.
yeah,
So, again, cards that realistically should have been in here and would have been nice to have. We're getting them, unfortunately, later. And almost. I hate it when Bandai does this. Like, they're treating LMs like promos, and we're getting them, obviously, when the cards are, like, past their prime. Like, obviously, some of those cards are still kind of used because they're just absolutely insane. But the sooner we should have gotten those cards, the more meta relevancy they would have had, allowing us to actually play them in more of a capacity than what we're actually able to.
Yeah. So according to Shooting Slayer, it is going to be 56 commons, 40 uncommons, 28 SRs, 18 secrets. Oh, sorry. 18 super rares, 28 rares. I am getting cross-eyed here. 4 secrets and 4 SPs coming with the 2.0.
Yeah, 18 super sounds about right. And 4 secrets. Like, it's going to be rough pull rate wise. Like, this, if I were to have gotten a case of any set in recent times, this probably is the set that I would be getting a case of just because of how bad the pull rates are probably going to be. Like, if we're
Yeah,
already struggling with 12 SRs versus 10, like, now we're almost doubling that to 18. Like, it was pretty bad in Special Booster 1.0. I don't remember how much we got in 1.0, but it was really high, and the
it's
pull
probably
rates were really bad.
around the same.
Yeah. So, uh,
well, that set was also
So
really bad because it was weighted for 3 for BT3. So you mainly got BT3 cards over any of the older like BT1 and 2s.
no, that was 1.5. You got mostly
Oh, sorry.
BT3. Yeah.
Okay.
1.0 was weighted more towards BT1,
Hmm.
but still, like, it was just an overblown set that had really bad pull rates in a time that the game was trying to launch in. Kind of was
Yeah.
literally a recipe for disaster that I'm so glad we made it past.
Well, that's
And
the other issue though, is that like if they weigh it towards like something like same as like the RB set was weighed more towards like you getting reprints.
reprints.
So like if they mess up and weigh it like that, like it'll ruin a lot of things too.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
Luckily, 18 is a weaker set like overall that it won't matter as much if it kind of gets messed up. And we have yet to see fully like what 19's up to. So
Yeah, 19 is Cross Hearts support as far as we know of, and that's about
We're
it.
getting very limited on the crossheart support.
Well,
So far from
it's
what we
Cross Hearts
understood.
manga, and it's going to be more Liberators. So right now, the only thing we know is the Fanby line, which is going to be split between 18 and 19 for Japan. But I'm guessing the Fanby line is going to be in full force in 2.0. Because there's no reason not to just give us both lines in one set. That would be crazy, right, Bandai? Right?
Yeah, the second half of the 19 is definitely going to be the rest of the Shoutmon manga support in the form of the evolved Dorumon, Ballistamon, Sparrowmon, and their crosses, along with the last of Nene's stuff in the form of Nene Shademon.
Yeah,
That's
there's
what I'm predicting.
I mean, they haven't revealed anything past the Liberator stuff from it, which is literally just one evolution line. So there's a lot that's going to be interesting about what that set is going to mean. Because a lot of people didn't like Cross Hearts. I liked Cross Hearts, and the fact that we just get more of it is it, especially an updated version, is something that might be interesting to keep an eye on in terms of power wise. Because the last time they introduced Cross, they really didn't understand how powerful it could be, and I think now they do, and they're trying to limit it a little bit more. But who knows what we're actually going to be getting? It's going to be a fun ride when we get there. And then, as far as to wrap up what BT17 is kind of doing and give like our final thoughts on it as a whole, we just have more Seeker support. So we get the Pulsemon line, we get the SOC X antibody line for Darugamon, or more specifically Dex Darugamon. And then we also get the last tiny little bit that we were missing for Fenry Lugamon, and we get Fenry Lugamon Takami Kazuchi, which basically splits the Fenry Lugamon deck into like two decks, technically three, because you have Takami Kazuchi OTK, then you have just, the good old fashioned Fenry OTK that we've been playing with since BT14. And then you technically have mixed SOC that uses some Fenry Lugamon stuff. Most of it is the older stuff, but it still uses it, which is just another direction that you could go because it pairs nicely with the Darugamon stuff, because Darugamon is another X antibody, it's another SOC, it's in purple, good stuff all around. So Takami Kazuchi is definitely really interesting. It kind of forces you to run one brick in the deck, which is the Pulsemon stuff. And Pulsemon, you also kind of have to run one brick in Fenry Lugamon. So it's a little bit awkward that way, but like the highs are so high because basically this card allows you to just win because of the fact that like when you get into Fen, you play out Kazuchimon, give your opponent a whole bunch of memory, then end of turn DNA into Takami Kazuchi, then Takami Kazuchi sets your memory back to 3, so the Mega was basically free, and then he allows you to just go absolutely ballistic from there.
You gain
Yeah.
1, and then you're back at 2, so it's actually your turn again.
Yeah, because the inheritable off of the new Fen is the old Fen ability in terms of the memory shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he attacks, you start trashing the top of the opponent's security.
Well, you trash the top of
So
yours to trash one from your opponent.
shooting,
Yeah,
they're
but you don't care
unlikely
if
to
you're winning.
do
Yeah,
another.
exactly. If you kill them, it
type
doesn't
of
Yeah,
matter.
and he's also recovering you if you have a Tamer in his Digivolution source, which you should.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be ahead on security, and you're going to start going absolutely ballistic because the level 5s is where you get to multi-attack. So just good stuff. And then if you want to talk about the deck stuff.
Yeah, so the collision, like SOC, like was pretty okay. Like the collision pieces are pretty cool. They give you a lot of control, and now they're just better because if at any point you get deleted, and that can be like game rules, that can be effect or battle, you can just digivolve into one of your guys from the trash, like of corresponding level. So like you basically have like pseudo jamming, you have like all sorts of stuff. Like in one of our test games, Guardian like negged my guy down by like just enough where I was at 0. And then I was just like, okay, well, rules check says I'm gonna die, so now I'll digivolve into my guy, and I'll live with 1 KDP, and then all of that'll fall off as my turn starts.
That's
Yeah, it was kind of
hilarious.
BS. I'll say that right now. That was BS.
Sounds like you should have DP'd more, like DP reduced by more.
I couldn't.
And so, like, there's lots of pretty cool stuff that it gets you. They do get a new tamer that you could play, but realistically, it's not that necessary. Being the spoiler secret final boss of Seekers.
Yeah,
You mean that cop out they did?
I mean, I felt like it was fairly obvious. Like, from the beginning, from like jump, I was like on the professor. I was like, that guy's bad.
Yeah, no shit.
I mean, he was just manipulating everyone. That's okay.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
professor?
Gaslighting
What professor
everybody.
hasn't?
I mean, they booed him because he was right.
So, like, I like it pure black. Like, I'm actually a really big fan of that Agumon. That Agumon is hilarious to me. So SOC gets a new Agumon that cares about when you play Kosuke's. Kosuke being the tamer from BT17. And it's in all turns, once per turn. When a Kosuke is played, you gain a memory and draw a card.
Yeah, so quite literally when you spit it out, it's just like, oh, look, you are at 0, now it's my turn, and Kosuke sets me to 3.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, so, like,
joking on that one.
you can do funny stuff like if you would end your turn at 1, you can just pull a Kosuke out, go back to 0, keep doing stuff, and then plug it back in somewhere. And then as your opponent ends their turn, you pull it back out. You mainly do it there to get a draw because, like, since it's a memory fixer, unless it's gonna push you above 3, it doesn't really do much, right? The gain 1 memory, but like drawing cards is always good. This is a
Especially in this game.
yeah.
Yes.
So
The
like
only one you gotta be watching out for, though, when it comes to drawing is Mirage. Because
Yeah,
Mirage will
but
just be like, nice memory there.
yeah, but this is where like meta dynamics start to kick in, and it's just like if Mirage and Ancient are fulfilling the same exact role, and Ancient is supposedly doing the role better because he's not a hardcore OTK deck, and he provides just as much aggression, if not better aggression, then why would you just not play the better deck?
right, and that one's different though because its effect is only on your own turn. So like you can play around it easier, like with something that you control very easily, like D-mind linking.
Yeah. And then, yeah, you get a big new fancy boss monster,
Mm-hmm.
and you also get a couple of tamers. Do you actually play the professor? I've seen like not a whole lot of
You could
decks
play it,
play it.
but to be fair, it's not as good. Like,
He's better in a hardcore Death X kind of deck.
well, like, which is what that deck would be anyway. So, like, but I get what you're saying. Like, it's probably better if you're playing like the old Dex pieces, like, because they were already had like a gimmick of trying to cheat Death X out as like a win con, and that's
Yeah.
like his main thing. But like, to be honest, it's not very needed. Like, I think Cool Boy ends up being a better use of his like of the slots that you would have given to the professor to
Yep.
Tartarus.
Fair enough.
But yeah, and then but like Cracker Fang, Code Cracker Fang,
They really
uh,
should
Yeah,
change that name.
aka AG.
is a very welcome inclusion to the deck. Like, gives you more AG names because like everybody that's played Fenrir Lugimon knows that sometimes a sore spot is just not seeing an AG name.
Yes.
So having that and it
One of
being a
the
memory
worst
fixer,
things
so that like
in
you're
existence.
kind of always able to do what you want, like it's pretty good.
Yeah, and then Pulsemon gets Leon Alexander. So in BT16 is when we got the fake Leon, who is also treated
Hacker
as a
Judge.
Leon. Yeah, Hacker Judge, which was the memory setter, and now you have your good Tamer, which is supposed to be like the BT14 AG for Pulsemon.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately for Pulsemon, he's still kind of just not good enough because he's a very security reliant deck because you get max capabilities when you're exactly at 3 security and you get half abilities at one end or the other. It's cool that you'll always get something, but it's not always in your control, and that's kind of where the problem starts. There's obviously like card quality issues where the effects just aren't good enough, but it also just doesn't have the ability to deal with the current state of the meta as is. And like Kazuchimon is still just trying to be Takami Kazuchi at the end of the day, rather than trying to be his own thing. He can.
I should know, considering I was playing against these guys and pissing them off.
Yeah, he can kind of be his own thing, but he is better for Takami Kazuchi, which is the
Well,
unfortunate thing.
in general, I think that the Pulsemon is a better shell to get to Taka.
Really?
Yeah. No doubt on
Yeah.
that one.
Well, I guess
Because
like
what I was-
you're running just what the Fen, and you're just getting to Kazuchi and just hard playing.
Well,
Fen?
so if you remember, the Fenrir is searchable by the deck, but Kazuchimon doesn't interact at all with the Fenrir side of the deck. But the Fenrir, because it has the guy in text or whatever, like it technically is a card that you can interact with.
oh, Kazuchimon.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Because
not a Pulsemon in text, because a lot of the Pulsemon stuff cares about Pulsemon in text.
Right. I'm talking about the big boy. The big boy has Pulsemon in text that it cares about.
Yeah.
So gives you Pulsemon in text, so it'll be good. And then the Fenrir, I think, also doesn't. It has like something that it says that I might be.
The Fenrir, I got it right here.
The Fenrir just
Fenrir cares if AG's there, if it lets you play
yeah, it lets you
itself
play.
or
It still has
or
Pulsemon in text.
Kazuchi.
It's all turns. It's all turns. Still has Pulsemon in text.
Oh yes, it does have Pulsemon in text.
yeah.
So because of that, it's better because the Pulsemon stuff just cares about in text. So like it's searchable in that deck, whereas like
Well,
sometimes
shit. I didn't notice
sometimes
that.
the Kazukimon is really bad because some of your cards in the Fenrir Luga shell are like specific. Like I can only trash dark animals here, or like this or that. Like you don't
Or
have
SOC.
yeah, or only SOC. So like you don't have as much generic like pitch a guy, like, and you just need to get that guy in trash, like to like set everything up. Whereas the Postemon's got it kind of down, and then their 5s from 16 like are actually really good. Like you have the purple one that like splits into like another level 5, and then that one's purple so that you can put a Fenrir on top of it.
Well,
So,
shit,
like, it
this
basically
actually
has
gives me some
everything.
ideas for the Pulsemon deck.
Yeah, so I think it's a better shell for doing Takami Kazuchi, to be honest. I think that, like, old-style Fenrir is better than Taka. I feel like Taka, you have to work a little harder to get to about the same point.
That's probably fair. That's very fair. But yeah, that's for the most part the vast majority of BT17 in a nutshell. In terms of power wise, where it is, like on a scale of 1 to 10, if we're using like BT16 in terms of how much it changed the game as like the barometer, and that was probably about an 8 or a
I'll
9.
be right back, fellas.
Yeah, you're good. And that was about an 8 or a 9. I think like this is about a 7 on that scale, because the only really competitive stuff outside of like just individual cards helping specific decks is going to be the aces, or not the aces, the hybrid stuff. That's like hybrid and SOC is really the main competitive bulk of what's coming out of BT17, which is not necessarily that great considering the majority of it is basically rendered almost irrelevant because of the current landscape of the game. Because, like, the big question is, unfortunately, can these decks compete with Magnamon? Like, Magnamon is officially the floor of Digimon currently. So, if a deck just can't deal with Magnamon, are you actually a deck? And as we are learning right now with EX6, no. If you can't deal with Magnamon, you're not actually a deck. And a lot of these just don't deal with Magnamon, which is sad.
Yeah, so, like, you still have, like, Blast Aces, so, like, Omnimon can technically do it, but, like, it's whatever. Like its shell's not fully there. Like it's not making the greatest use of like all of its legacy support right now. Sadly, like Ancient Gurumon like can deal with Magna fairly decently. Like
Yeah, he just ignores it.
yeah, you just ignore it and walk around it because of old Koji, and then you're just doing hybrid stuff. So like you can eventually just get to the point where like you just walk around Magna and you just like win the game.
Yeah, and they can't
Um,
get rid of AG no matter how much they try, and the
mhm,
more AGs you get, the worse it's going to get for the Magna player. Unless they could, like, hardcore aggro you down before you can them.
yeah. Collision is it affects player. So it Magna doesn't get to ignore it. Like how it would work, right? Is like so if Magna didn't already have blocker inherently, it wouldn't gain blocker. So then like Collision could like wouldn't be able to force it to block, but because it natively has blocker, it has to, even though it didn't gain it from Collision. So like Collision gives you ways to like
Oh, you're cutting in.
best. Oh,
You were
I
cutting
was
in.
saying Collision does a pretty
Yeah.
natively has it still has.
Yeah, you're still cutting in and out. But yeah, so Collision deals with Magnamon. Unblockable from Ancient deals with Magnamon. Red Hybrids can just beat over Magnamon. Like, we're starting to see this reoccurring pattern. And then Imperial already just has good tools to deal with Magnamon, and he just gets a little bit more support. So, like, you can kind of see these patterns start to emerge on what's playable literally because of the existence of Magnamon X. And we could say, like, the same thing about Numemon, but Numemon isn't necessarily stopping the opponent from playing. And like that's like the one benefit to Numemon is like, yeah, you could still do all the stuff you're trying to do. It's just Numemon just tries to do what it's doing faster. It's just trying to win faster, or inversely control the game harder than the opponent. And at least there's the ability to fight back against it. Like, it's not saying, hey, I'm a 15k invincible wall. What can you do to me? Numemon's just like, hey, I either brick and I'm going slow, or I just am gonna go fast and control the field. Like, it's just a very polarizing deck. But again, there's other ways to be able to at least fight against it, which is why like Magnamon is the floor, because Numemon is a deck that's able to beat Magnamon, and that's kind of the meta dynamic that we find ourselves in. And unfortunately, a lot of BT17 just doesn't have that ability, which is why like EX6 as an example, or not EX6, EX7, just without getting too deep into spoilers, doesn't look like a very good set because the majority of it just can't deal with Magnamon. And like the meta is literally shaped around Magnamon and what beats it, which is why currently Numemon is the best deck, because it's the best deck to beat Magnamon. So yeah.
Mhm.
But honestly, I think BT17 is going to be fine overall. I'm just excited to play around with new decks, test some stuff out, have a little bit of a meta refresh, even though, you know, Ancient, Magnamon, and uh, Numemon are still going to be like some of the best decks in the game currently. That's not changing.
Mhm.
So, any final thoughts, Headless?
Like I said, I'm excited for some of the jankier lists. Like, some of the guys that I like pegged as like fun, like, are being decently successful right now. Like Ragna, like, you know, I pegged that as like that was a deck I was gonna build for fun, and look at that boy, he's doing it. He's numbers, so that's pretty cool. I hope that maybe that can happen for Omnimon, but I kind of doubt it because he doesn't have the protection. But he's still a pretty cool card. I got a fun list for that. And I'm just looking forward to having new cards. Like I never mind having new cards at the end of the day.
No, and we get to start experimenting with like Agu Rush in a more truer sense because of the secret rare. Like, it's unfortunate that this set is also going to have 12 secret or 12 super rares. So super rare pull rates are not changing compared to what we've seen for like the past year, which yes, kind of sucks, and yes, does have an impact on the secondary market, as we are very distinctly realizing. It's just where the like money is gonna go, I guess, is gonna determine a lot. I think like probably Ancient is gonna be that card, because the Ancient stuff, as we kind of like experimented earlier with like old Agu and Gabuban stuff, they kind of also just want to play Ancients as well. So there's like a world where you're just still playing Ancient Garurumon and not an Ancient Garurumon deck, because the Ancient Garurumon, just when he dies, he spits out any tamer. So that's going to set up your mat. And inversely with the Ancient Greymon, that's going to set up your tie. So that way you could just set up a Agu or Garurumon to be able to then warp. And then with the inclusion of the LM stuff, that's going to be good. So like maybe Agumon and Gabubons will actually be viable once we get the LM stuff, which is going to be coming out, what, December?
Yeah, sadly, because Shine was also really waiting for those pieces too, because
What
they
was
wanted
Shine
to play
getting?
the Agu Bond of Courage, because they play Agumons natively, so having a level 7 you can warp into, pretty good. As
Oh, I
well
see.
as well as scrambles, so that you could pull out extra copies or the same copy of your Agumon that turns a guy into a tamer. A tamer into a Digimon, so that you could just have more aggression that you can pull out.
Yeah, that does sound pretty good. I mean, Scrambles is already like, oof, those cards are already really strong, and unfortunately, we're getting them in the LM stuff. But it's cool, at least like, we're getting all of them in one booster box, so that way we
I
don't have
mean,
to buy as many.
yeah,
And the
they
only
did
random
lead
stuff is
to
the alt arts.
mhm. They did lead to a pretty cool like deck concept of being like what undead slash like dark animal could do, like because now we finally have the Survivor Drachmon, and you can pull Survivor Drachmon the off of Scramble, and then while it's still start of your turn, it digivolves into the 4, and then your 4 like trashes a card from hand, and that card happens to be Skullbaluchamon, and then you either become Skullbaluchamon or a 5 that you like more, and you can just keep going from there. Like in theory, with like the right guys that like trash a card, and you having 2 Skullbaluchamons, you can get into a like mega level Digimon, and then if you had a memory setter, it just resets you back to 3, and then you take the rest of your turn.
Yeah, there's
There were some
Scrambles.
funny combos.
Yeah, scrambles definitely open up for some really goofy combos. Like, I understand the point of like when Digimon is making these types of cards, because the base idea of scramble is to be a comeback mechanic where it's just like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm down, but scramble puts me gives me a body to be able to start climbing back up again to fight back again. So like,
Yeah.
I like the idea. It's just their execution is usually really poor. And it was funny. I was watching a YouTube video on like basically I think the title of the video was like Bandai sucks, and the TLDR of it is Bandai sucks because they don't know what they're doing and they don't know how to sell their product. And like, after being a Digimon fan and being in the Bandai sphere, that is a very true statement. They do not know how to sell their product, and like I they make some very questionable decisions and choices,
Hmm.
which is why, like, as much as I want to see a Gen Con ban and restriction list take into effect as of BT17 or like midway through BT17, honestly, I think based on the schedule, we're probably not going to see a ban and restriction update until EX7 at the earliest, or Special Booster 2.0 at the latest. Like, that's the time frame I think they reasonably should do something, because we're this close to BT17 and they probably don't want to impact BT17 sales.
Hmm.
And then if they're doing it in Special Booster 2.0 or at the beginning of EX7, that's when they could do the whole choice restriction thing, and that's when they have a good like it just gives them more opportunity based on more data on how EN is playing it, because if JP is right in terms of they actually act based on EN, not based on JP, which it really feels the opposite. It's wild that they think that. We're the privileged ones, when
Mm-hmm.
it very much feels like they're the privileged ones. I guess it shows Bandai's bias by not being biased. I don't know. But yeah, it's BT17 is not going to be the time that we're going to get a ban and restriction list, and the game desperately needs one at this point. It's begging for something to be hit.
Well, it really needs it in
Yeah.
the JP meta. Like, JP's meta has been fairly stale. Like, the fact that Numemon and, like, Ancient Garu for them and a couple other things have, like, basically been there forever now, like, sitting at the top.
Yeah, to think for them, they've literally been playing a year of the war zone of Numemon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still really sad to think that Numemon is just one of the best decks, and it really came into full force as of like BT15 slash BT16. Like BT15 obviously gave us the X's, which is what enabled a lot of the degeneracy, and then BT16 just gave us good generic stuff to
Valk,
really bring it in.
Valk just being super strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like literally the deck was just waiting for any good ace that it could use in yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Which the stupid thing is, yellow has so many good aces, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we'll eventually get to talking about like a ban and restriction wish list. I don't know if that's going to be like the next episode or an episode or two. We'll see how things develop. But I think this is probably going to be a good stopping point. Guardian, any last final thoughts about BT17 as a whole?
Honestly, no, not really.
It's just going to be your normal hype cycle, a new set, new toys, and then go back to playing competitive stuff once we realize that it's all like there's not that much for it.
Pretty much.
Cool. So we're all in the same boat. I'll definitely be doing some good testing on some casual decks on the simulator once that gets updated. I've been playing a lot of some of the jankier decks currently, and I've actually been hating it. I hate
Mm-hmm.
testing really bad janky decks because like it's so demoralizing when you just see something that you just honestly can't deal with because your deck just can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna limit my casualness down, and play like the upper echelons of casual competitive. I can't go full casual. It's too difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
understandable. I mean, I'm literally right now remodifying Pulsemon after rereading Shut It.
I strike again.
I mean, my brother's like I play a lot of locals with my brother. He's looking at the Pulsemon deck as like his for funsies deck, but he's just like, yeah, I built Demon Lords. It's like 90% done. The only things he's realistically missing at this point is that's like actually huge and impactful is one chaos mode and two Shine Greymon Ruin modes, which he does not have the money for Shine Greymon Ruin mode. So I gotta
I'm
try to.
saving
it.
money for more.
Ban that card anyways. Get rid of it, Bandai. Save the card game.
Nope,
I
not happening.
honestly would not mind it, but that's
I don't
getting.
even care. I own 2 of it. I wouldn't care.
Yeah, I wouldn't care either. But yeah, that's all he's realistically missing from a fully, uh, like fully put together Demon Lord deck because after seeing like competitive Demon Lord decks use Ruin mode and how they're using Ruin mode, I'm like, that's why Ruin mode is degenerate. Got it. And then playing against my brother who doesn't have Ruin mode, it's just like, oh, I could get away with so much just because they didn't Ruin mode me.
Yep.
I got put under Runo blanket, like I said at the regional, like 4 turns in a row. And one of those turns it was the double version where it was 10k.
Oof.
It's not great. It's really not.
No, I wouldn't say it's great. But yeah, so I got to figure out a good deck to bring to locals because I need to bring like still a competitive deck, but not like, oh, this is borderline tier one where I'm gonna win all the time. I mean, I still want to win, but I want to at least make it more fun and interesting for everyone else involved, rather than, oh, I'm just gonna roll up with Numemon and then win
So
every week. I could.
this is the current list I have for Pulse. The degeneracy is just changed.
Yeah, but Pulsemon was going to be his casual BT17 deck, and I'm just going to be messing around with the Ancients a lot, and probably the SOC stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's going to be fun. Pre-release looks real janky, like extra janky, like more janky than the usual amount of jank. But that's pre-release in a nutshell. Digimon's not designed for it. I don't.
I really think that they should start doing pre-releases for the EX sets. Because the EX sets are like more self-contained and they have like closer knit like archetypes that like I think it'd be better in sealed environments.
Indeed.
I mean, this is where Bandai just doesn't know how to sell things. Like, honestly, I don't think that's a
Outside of
bad
video
idea.
games, you are right.
Even video games, they're not that great at selling things. They're okay. They're better on their video game department and probably their anime department. But, like, when it comes to literally everything else, they're awful. I hate Bandai Premium. I hate how they do promos. I hate LM. Like, there's a lot that just. Frustrates
They have
me.
a lot of franchises that kind of languish under them right now, like Kamen Rider, a franchise that they're not trying to leverage like basically at all in EN.
And when they try,
They
it's such a
learned their
half baked.
lesson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and when they try, it's just such a half baked attempt, which is unfortunately where like a lot of Digimon comes in because,
Did
you
you know
know,
that Kamen Rider had stuff in like the Vital bracelets, but we just never were offered it in EN?
yeah, there. Believe me, there was a lot of Vitality bracelets that just didn't come out, like Demon Slayer.
Yeah.
So, Bandai, get your act together, ban some stuff, but keep making good stuff, and we'll keep buying it. Is kind of the message at the end of the day. Like I said, eventually we'll get into an episode on our banner restriction wish list, and that's going to be a real fun episode when we get there. But I think this is a good wrapping up place. Thank you, Guardian. Thank you, Headless, for joining me on this episode. I know Nikki was busy, so he unfortunately couldn't make it this time around.
He's in the middle of the Final Fantasy grind
I
for
feel
the
ya.
drip.
I feel ya. I've been grinding Zenless Zone Zero for a hot minute.
I've been on First Descendants.
Is that any good?
Yeah, actually, it has a fairly put together story.
Okay,
Its
I might
combat
try.
system is kind of Warframe like,
Yeah, I might try it.
but otherwise, you can pretty much grind out and earn all the characters.
Yeah, I might try it. I've just been having a real hard time balancing work, life, and Digimon. As awful as that sounds, my life is literally work, a little bit of life, and then the rest is all Digimon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just going to be getting 4 boxes of BT17 like my normal amount, and we'll just kind of go
I'm
from there.
honestly going to start putting money aside because I'm considering ordering a case for the 1819.
I wouldn't blame you.
Ancho, you going to join me on this endeavor?
I mean, I'll have to wait to make that judgment call once we know what the heck is in 19. Because like, quite literally, the only things I care about is like I want the Duskmon AA and the Velgamon AA just for like art. Like they're the only cards that I've ever like wanted to collect.
I agree on that.
And
That artwork is fairly sick.
And like, I just still haven't found a build. Like, even with all of JP's like muddling around with like purple hybrid, like nothing like is compelling to me yet. And I'm trying so hard, like for like a week straight. Like I just labbed so many different versions of like Duskmon lists, trying to like figure it out and get it to work. But like nothing like is fully where I wanted it to be yet. So I'm not too sure that I care about 18. Like. I think
I
the
want the
only other
Lucamon
thing,
stuff. That's why I'm diving into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I forget. Is 18 where they have the Millennia stuff? Because some of that looks kind of
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
Yeah, so like maybe do that, like, but otherwise 18 just doesn't have enough for me. Like I in this card game I just really have never liked the hybrids, and it's mainly because they like screwed over the meta and like made everything kind of polarizing. Where like you'll be looking at a board and you're like, okay, I survived this turn, and then they'll be like hybrid for game, and you're just like, cool, cool, cool. Gee, thanks, Bandai.
Don't worry,
Yeah.
you're only gonna get more of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like 18 just isn't a set for me. Like 19 looks like it has the potential. I get my Justimon, and I at least Bandai's been listening to me. This is my year, like I've been saying.
That's an EX8.
Ev- yeah, yeah. But in every survey, I've put certain characters in. It was Tyrant Kabu for like the longest time. We finally got Tyrant Kabu. It was Just EX. Finally got that. And I've been asking for the alt modes for Jupiter and Juno. And we haven't gotten those yet, but fingers crossed that we'll eventually get like an EX set that gives us a Mega Zoo Olympus 12. And we can get the alt modes.
Yeah. So, anyway, thank you guys again for coming out and participating in my podcast. And thank you all listeners for making it all the way to the end. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.